Hi, everyone. Welcome to Happy to See Me, the podcast that puts the spotlight on the overlooked and underestimated. I'm Erika Casupanan, and this week I am speaking to manifestation coach Kathleen Cameron. But first, I'd love to start each episode talking about something I was happy to see this week. And if you are watching the video version of this podcast, you probably see the difference. But if you are just listening, then I will tell you what it is. My hair is blue. Now, don't be alarmed. I am still purple-haired Erika with the bob. The majority of my hair is still purple, but now I have some blue pieces framing my face. I have had my purple bob for years. We know that I love it. We know that it's the way that I feel the most authentic to me. But also, I thought it was time for a bit of a change. So when I went to my hair appointment this week and I saw my stylist, who I trust and I've been seeing him for years, I told him, I need some type of change that still fits within the Erika universe. So he suggested having these blue pieces frame my face. Well, once they fade, they're going to be kind of like a teal. I was nervous at first, to be honest, because I thought, okay, does that change who I am too much if it's a different color from purple framing my face? But then I also thought, hair is fun. Hello, I'm somebody who's had purple hairs for years. It's just meant to be fun. It doesn't change who I am. If I hate it, I can dye it again. So we went for it, and I am so happy with the end result. And I'm just so grateful that I was able to be open to another suggestion. And I'm grateful that I was able to have somebody who I trusted give me his expertise and his suggestion. So what I am happy to see this week is this blue in my purple bob. I am also very happy to see this week's guest, Kathleen Cameron. Kathleen is a mom, CEO, 8-figure entrepreneur, and an international best-selling author. In just 3 years, Kathleen built a $20 million business. Through Diamond Academy coaching, Kathleen has helped thousands of people to attract more success, love, and wealth into their lives. In this episode, we're talking all things manifestation. Kathleen talks about leaving her quote-unquote safe job in nursing to pursue entrepreneurship. She talks about why self-awareness is an important first step in manifesting and what it means to really bring your thoughts into your reality. Plus, Kathleen shares some practical tips on how to get started with manifestation today. I also share some of my manifestation stories, both massive and small, so I think you'll get a kick out of this episode. It could potentially help you make your dreams come true. So without further ado, here is my interview with Kathleen Cameron. I hope you enjoy it. It's so nice to talk to somebody who is from Canada. I feel like I talk to so many experts and they're from all over, so I love talking to some local talent.
Close to home.
So can you introduce yourself to the listeners and tell them a little bit about what you do?
Sure, yeah. So I'm a manifestation teacher. I think that's probably the best way for me to put it. I was a nurse for 12 years and started an online business in 2018. It went well. And then I started studying the law of attraction in September of 2019. I got introduced to Bob Proctor. He's in the movie The Secret. And I took a course with him and I started to just use these principles. My business blew up. I was no longer a nurse anymore at that point. Life just started, magic started happening all around me. So I started teaching it in January of 2020. That's when I launched my coaching academy. And I did it first alongside Bob. So developed a very good mentorship and friendship relationship with him before he passed in 2022. But it's been so beautiful because his work really changed my life. And so now I've been able to expand upon it and really tap into feminine energetics and allowing us to take that masculine that we're so used to, the hustle, the grind, the go, 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 the do, 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 that running energy, and pair it with the presence and the spirituality and the subconscious work just to move us forward in life. So now I'm honored to be able to teach it full time and build a very, very successful business doing so.
Congratulations. And that all started during the pandemic, right? This was just a few years ago.
Oh yeah, 2020. Yeah. So my business, I did 3.3 million in revenue my first year of business in 2020 during the pandemic. At first it was like, oh, is anybody going to really care about this? Like, is anybody really going to want to grow and expand and become better right now when everything's shut down? But what ended up happening is like everybody was at home and they were wanting to learn and they were wanting to think outside the box. And the paradigm was shifted so quickly that people were like, this woman is onto something. I don't have to work so hard and I can do more. And so people started launching businesses and making more money. And then that led to me flourishing, of course, because all of my students were winning. So it was beautiful.
I actually watched The Secret for the first time during the pandemic. That's the first time I ever heard about manifesting or anything. And even though you think that nobody wants to grow or anything during the pandemic, that time and having that break changed my life because I realized, one, I don't have to stay on the track I'm on. Two, everything is actually available to me. So I think that you actually hit and started your business at the perfect time.
I agree. It was divine timing.
So when you were a nurse, going into that profession, did you have a dream or a vision for what you thought your life was going to look like?
Oh my gosh, of course. So I always talk about this. I talk about the dream that we're sold into, so graduate from high school, get a degree, maybe get another one, get a master's degree, maybe if you're really loving school, get a PhD, then get a job, hopefully make $100,000 a year, pension, benefits, get married, have kids, work at a job for 30 years, maybe a few jobs, and then retire at 65, hopefully have enough money in the bank to be able to have a nice condo somewhere. That's like this dream that we're all sold into. So I did all of that, literally lived it to the point where I even became a nurse because everybody said, oh, well, nurses will always be needed. You'll always have a job. But that didn't come from a true abundance and prosperity mindset. That didn't come from true financial freedom. That came from lack and limitation. And I can see that now. So it was beautiful. Once I decided to not buy into that dream and to see something different for myself, actually like open up my eyes to all possibilities that were available. That's when my life just started to completely change. So I had to leave that kind of box that I was in order to create something completely different.
Oh, I can totally relate to that. Everyone who listens to this podcast knows that I had worked in marketing and corporate communications for 10 years, had a great job on paper, benefits, got to travel a lot, good salary, moved up. And then luckily during the pandemic, I had that time to think and I realized, okay, if I now have the chance to go and film Survivor, I'm just going to quit that job and I'm going to go for what I know I actually want to do. Yeah. Because even though you're in that job and even though everybody says it's the right thing to do, I think a lot of people, the two of us included, we know deep down that that's not what we should be doing. So when you were deciding you were going to make that jump from the stability of nursing to entrepreneurship, was that scary? And how did you make that jump?
The version I am today, I don't believe that anything is scary because I look at life so different now. So maybe uncomfortable would be the word I would use now. But that version of me back then, I would have to say that it required me to be bold. It required me to be daring. And I was somebody that was usually very safe. So I would make the safe decisions and do the safe things. And I wanted to make people happy. And I wanted to just maintain the status quo. And so I wasn't really willing to go outside of that. And so the discomfort came from choosing to be different than I normally am. So this wasn't a case of I've always been a daredevil. That's not at all how this is. I was in my safety net and I made the decision to do something daring. And so the discomfort was in, well, what if this doesn't work out the way I want it? And what if it's not better on the other side? What if the grass really isn't greener over there? But I got to tell you, when you get to a point in your life where you're at rock bottom or your version of rock bottom, and you get to sit with yourself, similar to what you said happened over the pandemic, that's when you start to realize that okay, there's only one way but up, and I can choose to go up from here. And so I would say it was the willingness to be bold and daring and to see something new and make a new decision. And then once the decision was made, it was okay, this is it. I'm not going to make a decision and then stress about it. It was, we're going to make the decision and we were going to move forward confidently in the direction of what I'm choosing. And so from now on, I'm an entrepreneur.
I love that. And I think it also requires a lot of bravery to even admit to yourself, I'm in a place where I don't want to be right now. Because I think that trips up a lot of people where they're just everything is fine. Let's just keep going. But by allowing yourself to be okay saying that something isn't good, then you also open yourself up to say, okay, now I can go for something that is better.
Oh, yeah. I always say to everybody, you don't have to be ungrateful for what you have, but you can be grateful but unsatisfied. And I think dissatisfaction or not being fully satisfied in your life is a very creative energy. And to recognize where that dissatisfaction is and being okay with acknowledging it says, you know what, my life is good, but it could be better here. Or I have enough money, but I really would love more. Or my relationship that I'm in right now is good, but I think that it could be even better. It could be more substantial, more passionate, more loving, more caring. That's how we move into a higher level experience for ourselves. But when you're just complacent and you're like, it is what it is. And maybe you're in gratitude and you're like, yeah, things are good for me. I'm grateful. That's a good thing. But I want you to be grateful, but want more. And that truly is the creative energy. That's where we move into higher level experiences and expressions. The danger actually lies more in satisfaction than dissatisfaction. So yeah, I agree with you there.
When you reach this point of dissatisfaction, is that when you started to discover manifestation? How did you get into this world?
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely was. What ended up happening is I launched my digital business and that was going well. And then I quit my nursing career to do my digital business, my online business full time. And I was selling some products online. It's 1:11 p.m. right now, my time, which is
Me too.
very significant. Well, of course, we're so close. 111 is the number one represents new beginnings. And so when you see the repeating sequence of the one, it's new beginnings, it's spirit, and it's my spirit sign. So anyway, I noticed it. Just had to call that out for anybody who's listening that is spiritual. But when I decided to work for myself full time and to launch that digital business, I was at a place where I felt like I wasn't worthy. I wasn't good enough. It wasn't working for me. I was very much in this energy of like, why not me? All of these people around me are winning. All of these people around me are successful. They're making money online. All of these other mompreneurs, they called themselves, all are branding themselves on social media, have businesses. They're taking their kids to the bus. They're going to the gym in the middle of the day. I want that life, you know? And so I quit my nursing career. And all I did was replace the exact same amount of money I made as a nurse with my digital business, which some would be like, okay, that's great, Kathleen. Now you work for yourself, you make the same, but that's not what I wanted. I wanted to double. I wanted to triple. So they always say the teacher will appear when the student is ready. So because I was at that low place, that dissatisfied place, that place where I was willing to start asking for more, that's when I heard a friend of mine that I was in business with talk about her mentor. And I went, what do you mean you're a mentor? Do you have a mentor? She's like, yeah, I have a coach. And I was like, oh, why was this a secret? Why was nobody talking about it? Then I found out another one of my leaders had a coach as well. And then this person had a coach. And I was like, I think it's time for me to find a coach. It's time for me to take a course. I noticed the subtleties, the signs. I followed my intuition. And that's when Bob came into my life randomly. I got introduced to him and started his course and program. And then from there, it was like, oh, I'm taking this dissatisfied energy and I am moving it into empowerment, and I am moving it into, I say I'm the most driven woman you'll probably ever meet. And I am proud of that now. Whereas I used to be a bit embarrassed by that, but now I'm so proud of it. I'm like, let's go. Shoot for the stars.
I love manifestation. Everyone who listens to this knows I'm a manifestation girly. I have all the stories of how it's worked out.
Good.
I find that when I consume manifestation content, it tends to come from people who have a spiritual background or they consider themselves intuitive. Do you consider yourself to be intuitive like that?
Absolutely. I think it's important to recognize that you are constantly receiving guidance, messages, downloads, and to follow that. But where I differ a little bit is I am a very beautiful combination of both the feminine and the masculine, the spiritual and the mechanical. And so what that means is that I understand that it's not simply meditation. It's not simply rituals like things like sound bath healings and going to the spa and, all that kind of stuff. Those all have a place and they're important. But I also understand that it's recognizing my subconscious patterns and programs and reprogramming them. So I always say from my spiritual side, I reprogram my human or my software, which is my mind. But then I also have my human body moving differently. So this is where I operate on all three planes. And this is where the true magic happens when you become a balance to all of that. So yes, I am intuitive and I follow my intuition. And yes, I am very highly spiritual, but I am also running a multi-million-dollar business. I am also taking action every single day in my business. And I'm also reprogramming my subconscious mind to believe in myself. So I think that there's a wide range of people out there that teach it in many, many different ways. I find mine to be very balanced. I actually say that my manifestation philosophy is spirituality meets personal growth and development.
So is that how you say your approach is a bit different than everybody else's? Because I feel like now online, there's so many people with their own course, their own way of doing it. Is that the biggest difference when it comes to yours?
Absolutely. And I also do not teach people how to do small, little, inconsistent manifestations. So I don't want to teach you how to manifest $10,000 tomorrow. I want to teach you how to manifest $10,000 every single month for the next 2 years. I want to teach you how to manifest $100,000 income every single month. I want to teach you how to manifest becoming a billionaire over your lifetime. This is a different level of manifestation. This is about transformation. So I teach people how to completely reprogram their human, to reprogram themselves, their intellectual mind, to become the version of you that it's going to take in order to create that elevated lifestyle. And so, yes, that's where it's a little bit different. And I teach from experience, not from concept. I have become my own best manifestation testimonial. So I apply everything to me first, and then I teach it. So I have manifested some wild and crazy things and heightened levels of awareness of it. So you can actually only teach people how to manifest from the level at which you've manifested yourself. If you've only made $10,000 a month in your business and you are teaching people how to manifest $100,000 a month in their business, I would say that you are not authentically teaching how to be a vibrational match because you are unaware yourself. I teach from the level of abundance that I've been able to bring into my life. Right now, the biggest month we had was 1.7 million. Mm-hmm. So I teach from that place, from that experience. And then my health too. I've recently just completely transformed my health. I look completely different, but it all comes from identifying my identity in a new way. I eat foods that I hated my whole entire life. I've fallen in love with them now, and I hated exercise and now I love it. But it's because I've become a new woman. And so it's a big difference. Yeah.
I would love to hear more about your experience. Do you remember the first thing you manifested? And was it something that you intentionally manifested, or looking back, you didn't realize that your thoughts were bringing this into your reality?
The very first, I will say, conscious manifestation. I love to differentiate between conscious and unconscious. And simply what that means is you did it on purpose and you were aware of it versus you didn't. So the first conscious manifestation was a coffee. Mm-hmm. I actually thought to myself, I would love a coffee today. I wonder if I can somehow manifest a coffee. So I just said, I would love a coffee. We'll see what happens. Let it go. And at the time, I had somebody that came and cleaned my house once a month. That was one of the little luxuries I had decided to add on to my life to increase my capacity to receive. And she called me and she was on her way over and she never called me. That was unusual. She just showed up and I answered. I said, oh, maybe she's not coming. And I answered and I said, hey, how are you doing? And she said, hey, I'm on my way over. I'm stopping for a coffee. Would you like one? Mm-hmm. And I was like, you've never asked me that before. Like, that's not normal. I'm like, what made you ask me that? She's like, I don't know. I just thought about you. I thought maybe you would want it. So that was my first, I would say, conscious manifestation. But when I first got into this material, I actually started to become aware of all the unconscious manifestations that I'd been manifesting my whole life. Mm-hmm. So it was like, oh, I did that. Oh, yeah, I did that. Oh, yeah, I did that. So we will actually inadvertently select things that we're afraid of. And that's what I started to notice, is that I was continuing to manifest unconsciously, no sales in my business, people on my team not doing very well, because I was anticipating my team not doing well. So then they wouldn't do well because that's my expectation. So that was my first fun one. But then I manifested $20,000. I manifested winning giveaways and prizes just for fun. Like when I first started, I was like, let's see if I can win that. I manifest cancellations of massages and lash appointments all the time. Mm-hmm. My lash girl, she's like, I said, oh, I can't come for my lash appointment tomorrow. I got to do it on a different day now. Do you want me to do my work or do you want to do it? And she's like, no, let me do it, because she knows that I will manifest someone canceling their appointment on the day and time I want to go. Mm-hmm. So she's like, no, let me do it.
Oh my gosh. I love that. And I actually remember my first unconscious manifestation, which is massive, because I grew up thinking, oh, you have to have humility. You shouldn't be saying out loud the things you want. Now as an adult, I know that that is not how it works. But I always thought, okay, the things that I really want, I need to keep them to myself. But for some reason, ever since I was a kid, I told every single person I knew nonchalantly, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to win Survivor one day. And I'd be like, yeah, so when I'm on Survivor, this is going to happen. Or after I win Survivor, then I'm going to do this. And for most of my life, Canadians were not eligible to be on Survivor. So I was just saying this as if it was going to happen, even though at that point it was not possible for it to happen. And then, of course, lo and behold, I end up being the first person in Canada to get cast on the show and then win. And I realized, I'm like, oh, if I was saying that all my life and then that happened, I need to just start saying everything else I need.
Yes. And what's so beautiful about that, and I don't know if you've watched the Shawn Mendes documentary that's on Netflix.
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's so cool. You'll resonate because you're from Toronto. Like, the whole thing was about how he manifested selling out the Rogers Center. They don't advertise that that's what it's about, but when I watched it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this whole thing was about it. He wrote it out. He wrote out that he's a pop star and he sold out the Rogers Center. And what's so beautiful is all of his friends, when he was in high school, all of his friends were playing basketball, riding outside on their bikes, blah, blah, blah. And he's at home playing the guitar, practicing his music because in his mind, he decided, I'm not like the other kids. I'm a pop star selling out the Rogers Center. So his actions matched what the idea was. And he chose to see something outside of what normal or traditional people would see. So that story of you and Survivor is really beautiful because you had to see something for yourself that even the world had never even seen, a Canadian being on there. So that's a beautiful story. I didn't know that about you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that was the big, major unconscious one. I have also small conscious ones all the time. I collect these little figures called Sunny Angels. They're usually sold out everywhere. But then one day I posted a photo and I'm like, oh, should I get another Sunny Angel? And then I went out for dinner that night and my friend was like, I was at the store a few days ago, saw that there were Sunny Angels and they're normally not in stock. So I bought them for us and our friends. I'm like, funny how that happened. So I'm like, what I've learned is just keep saying out loud what you want and keep focused on what you want because one way or another, you're going to get it.
Well, what's so interesting too, this is another little example. So I always ask myself, what could I manifest that would help others more? So I understand that my manifestations are tied to the overall good of the world. Like, I'm not over here manifesting for myself, just for me to win. Like, that's not what this is about. This is actually the greater good of all. And that's truly how you will tap into the infinite supply, is if you are in the service of others. So I'm always like, what could I manifest that would help more people? And so one day I was sitting there and I thought, I would absolutely love to share this information on like the Drew Barrymore show or the Kelly Clarkson show. I think that the audience of women at home listening would absolutely love this material and love this message. And so I've given this as an example to my students all the time. This is something that I would love to do. Most people aren't thinking they're going to be on these types of shows, but I'm willing to see myself in that way. I'm like, why not? And I'm not attached to the outcome, so I don't need it. It's just that would be fun and it would be nice if that were to happen. Well, somebody decided last week or the week before to go on this beautiful, it was almost like a GoFundMe account, but it wasn't GoFundMe. It was Go Get Kathleen on Drew Barrymore and Kelly Clarkson. Mm-hmm. And they all started this group and they all started posting saying that I should be on these shows. And I was like, this is manifestation. Like, the bridge of incidents will unfold into the realization of your desire. You just have to let your hands go. The rest of the world and God will take care of it. And so I'm not booked to be on the shows anytime soon, but I'm sure maybe even by the time this is released, there'll be a booking. But it's in this energy of fun, of lightness, of confidence and knowingness. And then the world responds to you so beautifully.
Exactly. And it's like, what's the worst that can happen? If you put your desire out there, what's the worst that can happen? You just go about your day as you normally do and the sun still comes up the next morning. Like, you don't really have anything to lose.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing, and you and I have probably really moved past this into the point where it doesn't faze us anymore. But what's the worst case that can happen? Your ego will get bruised. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I always say, you can't hurt me. I'm eternal. I'm a spiritual being. I cannot be hurt. The only thing that can be hurt is like my ego can be bruised a little bit. So at this point, it doesn't faze me anymore. But for some people, what they're most afraid of is just feeling unworthy or not good enough. So when you build up that, it sounds like you really have that, Erika, is that knowingness and that worthiness and believing that, yes, I can have this too. So when you're there, you got nothing to lose.
Thank you. And it does take time. For anyone who's listening, it's not like a snap your fingers thing. It's like a lot of reflecting on yourself and your experience and why you feel the way you feel. So it takes time. So everybody can get there. But I appreciate that you think that about me.
I can feel it off you.
Thank you. I want to ask about one of the biggest criticisms about manifestation that I see is that it doesn't always account for things like systemic inequalities, or it's easier for people who have a lot of privilege to make things come true. So how do you take all of this into account as a coach?
So there's a difference between the way in which I like to teach this is that there is a difference between systemic inequalities that exist in our 3D reality and you holding the systemic inequalities as limitations within the subconscious mind. So what that means is that there are certain things that continue to exist every single day around you. So these will be different types of oppression. They're going to exist systemically. Some are getting better than others. Some seem to be or would look like they're getting worse. But the most important thing and the only thing that you can control in this moment is your ability held by those limitations in your mind. So I will give my personal example, and I understand not everyone will resonate, but I will extrapolate how that resonates with other people. So for me, the thing that made me feel limited was the idea that because I'm a plus size woman, so when I launched my coaching business, I was about 300 pounds and I have been considered to be overweight or fat or obese for most of my life. And so we know that the world treats fat people differently than it treats thin people. And that's shifting. I can definitely feel a shift. But I grew up thinking that in order for me to be successful, to make any money, to be seen, to be visible, that I needed to be thin. So I spent my whole life trying to be skinny to match that systemic beauty ideal that said, we want you to be thin. And so when I started studying this material, I realized I started looking at it and going, is that really true? Is it really true that only skinny people can be successful, that only skinny people get the job promotions, that the beautiful are the ones that make the most money, the beautiful ones are the only ones on the magazines, da, 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 da. And I started to question it. And I said, hold on, what if I believe something different? So what if I believe that the body that I'm in right now is beautiful, that I'm beautiful, and that I can be successful today? So I removed the limit from my mind. Like, it didn't go away in the world. It wasn't like the world was suddenly like, oh, we love plus size people today. Those things all still exist, but I removed them from my thinking. So it let me elevate and it let me soar. I no longer function from that limitation. So this example can actually go for things like gender inequalities. This can actually go for things like race, intelligence. There was a time where females couldn't even vote or go and get jobs. And here we are today soaring and making millions of dollars running businesses. And how that happened was there had to be women that were willing to say, the world outside of me says I can't, but the world inside of me says I can. So that's how I teach manifestation, is to remove the limitations within the mind to allow yourself to ascend up and out of the systemic issues.
It sounds like it's so complicated to get started. Is it actually complicated to get started with manifestation? How should people get started?
I know a majority of manifestation teachers will say to start with a goal or a wish or a desire or a dream. Like, what would you love? And then start moving towards that. I actually believe that self-awareness is the starting point of all manifestations, because if you are not self-aware, if you don't know who you are, if you don't know what makes you happy, what makes you sad, what makes you strong, what makes you weak, what you love about yourself, what you don't, you are going to be trying to manifest something that you have no idea how to manifest. And you're likely going to want things that the world told you to want and not what you really want. So I always say self-awareness is first. So go within and study yourself. Ask, who am I? What do I love? What do I really want for my life? What makes me happy? What makes me sad? What triggers me? Oh my gosh. The most growth is in the things that really piss you off. The times that you see things happen and you're aggravated, that's where the growth is. So once you become self-aware and you learn to know yourself, I call it introspection, the magic starts to happen, because then when you go to the next step in deciding what it is that you do want, you're actually building your dream life instead of somebody else's dream life. So I think about becoming a nurse and making $100,000 a year. That wasn't my dream. Mm-hmm. I just didn't know to dream different because I didn't know myself. So now, like, I build my life based on exactly what I want because I know myself. So the first step is always self-awareness. Start a journaling practice. Start asking yourself questions. Be an observer of your thoughts. Our thoughts are energy and they manifest. And not enough people understand that. It's not about writing something out a bunch of times. It's not about doing a little manifestation ritual. It's about your thoughts aligning vibrationally to the desired state. So me having a multi-million-dollar business, being an empowered, successful business owner, she thinks a certain way. And the nurse before, those thoughts didn't match. So I had to think new thoughts in order to think like her. And, those are empowered thoughts. So vibrationally, I brought her to me. So self-awareness, decide what it is that you want, and then start to change your thinking and your feeling, and then start behaving like that version.
So let's say you start doing all of these things and you start making progress, you get closer to your manifestation. What happens if you get something that you thought you really wanted and it wasn't what it was cut out to be, or you didn't get exactly what you want? How are you able to move forward through that?
This is really beautiful because manifestation is something that you can't always control. So you can't always control exactly when your manifestation is going to come or how it's going to come and exactly the way that it will come. So your ability to be flexible is really important. So that's why they say this or something better is such a beautiful statement, because with that, you're not attached to a certain outcome. You're not trying to control it. So it's like, don't be trying to manifest a specific man with a specific name. Don't be trying to manifest John. Try to manifest John or something better. Try to manifest this much money or something better, this business or something better, and it keeps you open so that when the manifestation comes through, you're like, oh, okay, well, this must be better then. This must be the better. This must be meant for me. But you don't ever want to be dissatisfied with your manifestations coming through. You don't want to be displeased. So you don't want to be like, I don't want this. You want to say, thank you. Perhaps I needed to be more clear. So the clarity might be, okay, thank you for this. I'm so grateful, but I would also love this. So grateful, but never satisfied is the key. But flexibility, knowing that it's always on its way. I'm just thinking now that you're asking this question, I don't think I've ever said that a manifestation didn't happen, or it didn't happen how I wanted it to, or that I'm not happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just not even in my vocabulary.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah. The other thing I never say is my manifestation isn't here yet,
Mm-hmm.
or this manifestation didn't work, because you're always working. It's always on its way. I also understand, Erika, that with manifestation, everything starts in the mind and then it moves into the physical. So the physical 3D world is in behind you psychologically. And so I couldn't look at my life and be like, it's not here, because that would stop the manifestation and I don't want to stop it. So it's on its way.
Yeah. See, I've had situations where I've wanted things and they haven't turned out exactly as I thought they would. But then in the end, I'm like, this was way better. So for example, last year I was looking for a new place in Toronto. As many folks know, it's very competitive to find a place in downtown Toronto. I remember making a list of the things I wanted and how I wanted to feel. And I was like, if I get 80% of things on this list, I will be happy. I wanted to move by a certain date. I was applying for places, wasn't getting them, and I was getting so frustrated. And then I ended up missing the target date when I wanted to move. But then I ended up finding the place I'm in now. And instead of hitting 80% of the things on the list, it hit 100% of the things on the list. The only thing is it wasn't available for occupancy on the exact day that I wanted. So I realized, even though it wasn't to the exact timeline I wanted, I actually ended up with something way better than if I had settled for something for the timeline. And in the end, it's like, now that I look back, it doesn't matter that I was in my older place for a bit longer, because now I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Totally. And I say to people all the time, listen, in 3 years, when you're sitting there and you have everything you ever wanted, your life is perfect. You're so grateful. You don't look back and go, oh, but I wanted it in 6 months and it took 3 years. That's never a thought in your mind. So we have to detach from time altogether. Like time is not a real thing anyways. So don't be attached to timelines. Let it happen when it'll happen, and know that it's on its way. It's here. It's available. It's done. And then it'll come. And oftentimes it ends up being better than you thought. So whenever any of my one-on-one clients say, it's not here, or it's not working out, or I'm manifesting that house and my house sold. And I'm like, okay, but you asked for a beautiful villa in Spain and you will end up in a beautiful villa in Spain. And if that one sold, it meant it wasn't for you. That the one that is available for you is on its way. So I think that's why I never think to myself, it's not here, it's taking too long, it hasn't shown up. Like, I'm really good in the in-between, Erika.
Mm-hmm.
Really good in the in-between.
Good for you. The in-between is very hard. Well, no, I'll say this. I think that it takes getting through in-betweens to realize that in-betweens are just temporary. When I applied for Survivor, I was supposed to film in March 2020. Obviously, no one was traveling internationally at that time, so I had to wait a year. And it's devastating in that in-between, waiting to see, is the show going to come back? Am I going to be able to film the show? But then after having waited for the year, I obviously had the best outcome that I could have dreamed of. So I think that getting through that, I realized, okay, I went through that year of uncertainty, but then it ended up being fine. So I think that for me, I had to live through examples of how the in-between is okay. So I understand for other people, if it feels difficult being in the waiting, it's like you have to get through that waiting to be able to get through future waiting periods too.
Yeah. And I don't use the word waiting. The reason I don't use the word waiting is because when you're waiting for something, it's like you don't have the control.
Mm-hmm.
So I just say that I'm eternally grateful. I am sitting here and I am so grateful for everything that I have. And I'm joyfully expecting all that's on its way. Waiting to me is like sitting in a waiting room, and I get annoyed by that. So I don't use the waiting energy. I call it the in-between or the joyful expectation. But just be careful what we say, because the language that we use becomes our truth and our reality. So if you think that in-between is hard, it'll forever be hard. So what I would say instead is like, I'm becoming more aware of how to be joyful in the in-between. Or I love that you're good in the in-between. I'm working on that myself right now. That keeps you open to being good in the in-between. But all you really need in the in-between is faith. This is where your faith is the most important and the most powerful. When everything's working out and it's showing up and everything's amazing, faith just sits back and is like, you got this, right? But when you're in the in-between or you're in a trough, so we live in a rhythm. So there's the law of rhythm. It's a universal law. There's always ups and there's always downs. You're forever going to experience them. No matter how much money you make, how successful you are, you're always in that rhythm. And so when you're in a down of a rhythm, your faith, go to faith. Tell yourself it is all working out. It is always all happening. It is all here for you. In those moments, we don't want to do more. We don't want to force. We want to we want to allow, we want to surrender. We want to have absolute faith that it's all done.
I want to ask you more about universal laws, because I read about a lot of them in manifestation. So can you explain what a universal law is, and then which universal laws you tend to use more in your manifestation coaching?
Universal laws are really beautiful. If you think about the laws that we've created as a society, so like legal laws and crime laws, we made up rules that if you do this, this happens. So if we think about universal law, these are also considered natural laws. So these are the laws that exist. Just naturally, it's the way it is. So no human created these laws. We didn't say, okay, we're going to create this. Nature literally created these laws. They are what they are no matter where you are in the universe, right? So universal law, that's why we say that. One of my favorite universal laws, and it's not about using them or not using them. It's about working with them or against them. They exist no matter what. They're here. They are truths. If you're working against them, you don't believe they're true. So you're paddling your boat upstream and making it harder. But if you're working with the laws, you're going downstream and you're letting nature take you. For example, I'll give you one of my favorites, the perpetual transmutation of energy. This is a universal law. It's also rooted in physics. So it says that anywhere in the universe, energy is perpetually transmuting. So perpetually means constant, doesn't stop. So energy is always moving and it is always transmuting, which means changing into form. So if you put a glass of water out and you left that glass of water sit on the counter, it will go from water. It'll turn into a different form and it'll dissolve. But the opposite of that would also be with ice. So if you put ice, like water, into the cold, it'll turn into ice. So it's changing form. Water, when we boil it, it turns into vapor. It'll boil away if you left it sit there. So energy is always changing into a different form. That is universal law. Wherever you are, anywhere, that's what happens. So apply that to manifestation. Thoughts are energy that are perpetually transmuting into physical things. Thoughts into things. So if you believe this to be true, that every idea on the screen of the mind manifests into the physical form by law, it happens no matter what, thoughts into things, you believe that, so you live your life that way. So you're working with the law. So now you just know all you got to do is think it. So for you and Survivor, all you had to do was continue to think it, believe it, speak it, and it came into the physical form. It's a beautiful example of the law. But most people are fighting the law. They're working against it. They're going upstream. So they're like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work. And I don't know if this is ever going to happen. And oh, I'm not sure. I'm hoping and wishing. And they're doubting and they're in a state of fear and they don't believe this law. And so you're making it a lot harder on yourself. So if you just believe every single thing that we have in our existence right now started in one place, in someone's mind, everything. It was an idea first before it was here in the physical form. This microphone that we're using, this software that we're using right now to record this podcast, even the idea of a podcast, it all started in somebody's mind. So the more you can believe that and understand then that your thoughts are becoming things every day, the easier your life will become and the faster your manifestations will come. But that's one of my all-time favorite laws.
Ooh, that's so trippy to think about how, everything happens that was once a thought. And even if you think about something in your life, something could seem like it's not out of this world, but you want to go on a vacation and then you book the vacation and then you go. You came up with that thought and then now you're going. So we're doing this all the time.
All the time. And then people will ask me, so does that mean that every single individual thought manifests? So you think of something once and it shows up? No, it's actually perpetual transmutation of energy. So the more you think about a thought, the more you believe in that thought, the more it's real for you, the more likely it is to manifest. So if you just think about it like one time and you never ever think about it again, it's unlikely that that will manifest unless you're completely detached. But the more you can talk about it, think about it, live it, be it, the more likely it is to manifest.
I would love to leave everyone with a practical exercise that they can start doing, whether or not they are an experienced manifester or they're just getting started. So can you explain what the 3-3-3 exercise is?
Oh my gosh, yes. The 3-3-3 exercise is something that I actually learned through Bob Proctor, but I think it originally came from Jack Canfield, the author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul books. But basically what 3-3-3 is to enter into the realm of infinite possibility and not entertain limitation at all. So it's a brainstorming exercise. So let's say you write on the top of the page, how can I make $1,000 today? For example, you write that on the top of your page. So on one side, you're going to put all the reasons why it's not going to work. And on the other side, you're going to write all the ways you can. So you're only going to entertain the ways in which you can make 1,000. And if any thought, feeling, action comes up that says you can't, it's not possible, you owe this, blah, 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 you're going to disregard. You're going to disregard. So you're actually accessing infinite supply. You're actually accessing the fourth dimension, which is your imagination, to call in ideas and things and ways in which that 1,000 can come to you. But you're allowing your mind to let go of the reasons why it can't happen. So I use this strategy actually for my business planning. So when I plan for what I want to do in my business on every fiscal year, like when we're planning for the new fiscal year, we sit down and we talk about all the ways our plan can happen. And we do not even discuss or talk about any reason why it can't, any problems, any roadblocks, nothing. So this is moving yourself into creation mode instead of problem solving mode. Problem solving mode keeps problems alive. Mm-hmm. Creation mode puts you into true manifestation territory.
When you run into roadblocks, how do you work through those in your mind, or how do you kind of frame them in your mind?
I don't believe in roadblocks. Mm-hmm. So I don't believe it's actually possible to be blocked in any way. A belief that you are blocked actually keeps you blocked. And so I don't believe that there's roadblocks. I think there's a law of rhythm that happens. Mm-hmm. So there's always a rhythm to life and there's always opposites of every experience. So as I'm manifesting all of these good things, there's also going to be bad things. So when I see circumstances or events of my life that are in contrast to what I want, I look at it and I go, okay, Could it be that this is the opposite of the manifestation? Could it be that this is things coming apart to only come back together?
Mhm.
And so there's only opportunities. There's never blocks, never
Mhm.
blocks.
Yeah, I totally hear you. I think it could be, for some, it could be really easy to see something and think, oh, I thought I really wanted that. And then to see it not come to life in that way. The way that I see things now, I'm just like, oh, okay, it's because I'm actually supposed to go over here and do this instead. So I'm like, oh, even though that could seem bad on paper, I'm like, no, that was a good thing. Let me just go over here and do this instead.
Yeah, and things are always happening. I truly do believe that things are always happening for us, and your ability to be in a flow state and allow yourself to ride the waves of life is to understand that nothing is blocking you, nothing is keeping you, and that everything that happens is what's meant for you. A little example of this too is like, it's just about being flexible. So I went out for dinner and I ordered something, and I was trying to decide between two dinners and two different things that I wanted. I wasn't quite sure which one I wanted, so I ordered the one. And then the food comes and they gave me the other one. And I never told them that I was considering this other one. I just ordered the one and then they bring me the other one. So in that moment, it was like, I guess I'm meant to have this one. And that's it.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to be upset about it. I'm not going to send it back and ask for a change. It was just, I'm meant to have this one. And that's just the way that I try to flow through life. But the biggest thing is that what you expect and anticipate is what will manifest. If you're expecting or anticipating to be blocked, for it to not happen, to not show up, that's what you'll manifest.
Well, I am really fortunate that we were able to get in touch and have this conversation today. So I don't see this as a block. I see this as something that will help me and so many people move forward. So thank you, Kathleen.
Beautiful.
If people want to keep up with you online, where can they do that?
I would say my Instagram is probably a beautiful place. Kathleen Cameron Manifests. There's lots of beautiful content there. And then the YouTube channel, it's growing really, really fast. I've become open to receive, to be able to teach more people. And so that is growing really, really quick. So I have a lot of beautiful content going there, and it's absolutely free. So you can go and just binge all day and night if you want and learn about manifestation. So I think that's Kathleen Cameron on YouTube.
Amazing. Everyone tune in. I've been following you and there's so much good stuff there. So I'm sure people will get so much out of it. Kathleen, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
You're so welcome. And you know what? I'm just so honored that you asked me to come on and that you shared some of your manifestation stories. And look at how powerful you are, girl.
Thank you.
So beautiful.
Thank you, Kathleen, for all of your manifestation wisdom. Now, I love to end each episode by answering a listener question. And this question, I guess, is inspired by the last 2 weeks of the podcast, where in my intro, I was talking about my unassisted chin-ups. And I do think my unassisted chin-ups are a result of manifestation. Of course, there's the manifestation and seeing it and wanting it. And there's also the work that I put in to be able to do the unassisted chin-ups. So the question is, what is your workout routine? And I have done so many different types of workouts over the years. Pre-pandemic, I was working out multiple times a day, especially as I was getting ready to film Survivor. But to be honest, I actually still do a lot of home workouts. So I'm still in that pandemic home workout mode. So it's a combination of a few things. I love to do strength training at my place. I would say that I do a lot of YouTube training. So if anybody does YouTube fitness and they follow Carolyn Gervin, that is whose programs I've been following for the last few years. So definitely check her out because she adds a lot of resistance training. So I found I've been able to get much stronger through doing her programs. I also do yoga at home. The gym in my condo recently opened, so I'm able to now finally go on the treadmill and do a bit more cardio and mix in some running, although I would say my running is currently like a nice jog. And then once a week, I see my personal trainer, and that's when we do the strength training and the heavier lifting where I really push myself. In terms of things that I do every day, my chin-up training is something that I do maybe 6 days a week. So my trainer gives me a list of exercises that I need to do in the morning. That's a mix of assisted and unassisted chin-ups to make sure that I can consistently do chin-ups and I can increase the number of chin-ups that I'm doing. And the one thing that I make sure I do after all of my workouts in the morning is I always meditate. So for 10 to 15 minutes a day, I take a moment to meditate. And there's something for me about the ritual of how that closes out the workout portion of my day and it gets me ready for the rest of my day. So that is my current workout routine. But like I said, I have done many workouts over the years, so who knows? Maybe it could change tomorrow. Maybe it could change next week. But thank you for being curious about my fitness. And I hope that is helpful. I don't do anything that's super fancy. So thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you know someone who you think can benefit from Kathleen's manifestation, you can send this episode to them. It really helps for you to share the episode. And also, if you can subscribe, rate, and review the podcast wherever you get your podcast. If you haven't already, please follow us on Instagram and on YouTube. It's at Happy to See Me Pod. Thank you for spending time with me this week, and I will be happy to see you next Monday.